welcome to the Gloucester and Yonge. I am Isaac Chan, Vice President at Concord, and welcome everyone here. So, we selected this location because of its unique location. We are here in one of our medical office units. At the same time, on the ground floor, we have a very exciting set of retail spaces that the majority of them are leased out. And we are about to kind of launch our heritage units over on the Gloucester Street side as well, all of which are kind of able to kind of use as both, of the heritage units as commercial and residential. So all that in a really cool Yonge Street setting, along with, subway access, and so we found it to be a very good setting for to conduct this keynote session. So today I think through the journey of preparing this development, we kind of come across too. Often we come across different individuals, whether that be commercial and residential brokers, medical office practitioners, as well as savvy investors who want to kind of look for a great investment. And from that, I find that even despite you guys here being great educated individuals, I find that often the key to success in acquiring such property is having good knowledge, being informed. And as much as you guys are very educated and informed yourself, but I always find that you can always benefit from more knowledge. And today we have a great set of keynote speakers that will be able to give you more advice and guidance and shed light towards demystifying some of the things related to setting up and acquiring a great office retail space, for whether that be for investment needs or for your operational needs. So with that in mind, I don't want to hog up the mic for too long. I want to pass on to Nigel, who will do a better introduction to our keynote speakers. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy.
Thank you, Isaac. Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to Gloucester and Yonge. And today's seminar, which is entitled Retail, Design, and Commercial Insights. My name is Nigel. I'm with the commercial team, with Isaac's team, and we are super pleased to have two amazing keynote speakers today. We have Eric Pook, President of Cirrus Consulting, and we have Hemant Modi, who is the founder and principal designer of Design TWG. What's interesting is that the two topics covered by Eric and Hemant, although quite different, actually dovetail into one another as part of an overall project process, a commercial project process. What we have seen quite often is that very rarely all entities of a project come together under one roof at the same time to discuss and consult on a project. And with that in mind, this seminar, we hope to shine a light on the commercial project process as a whole, and this will facilitate communication, consultation, and more coordination between all the entities. And that, in our opinion, is what will make a project successful, and at the end, will deliver a better business outcome for the tenant. So the first keynote speaker will be followed by an interactive Q&A session. And then right after the keynote, after the Q&A session, we will have a break. This break will facilitate networking, some refreshments, and also the property tours. The property tours will start and end in this area and will be led by our commercial team. The property tours will cover the medical offices on this level, the ground floor offices or commercial units, as well as the backup house areas and the TTC tunnel. And last but not the least, our mixed-use heritage units all the way in the northeast corner of the property. So please make sure you take advantage of this and join the tour. A few housekeeping notes. Washrooms on this level. The ladies' washroom is out to the right down the corridor, and the men's washroom is to the left around the corner. Also, you would have received an Umomo gift card on sign up. Umomo is our brand new pop-up tenant in Unit 4 on the ground floor. So please do visit them after the seminar is over to see what they have to offer. And with that, I invite our first amazing keynote speaker, Pook of Cirrus Consulting.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, everybody. How are we feeling, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon?
Very good.
Excellent. First of all, thank you so much, Nigel, the entire Concord team. This is pretty unprecedented. This is a really unique opportunity that shows the state of affairs of where we are now as a city. It really shifts a unique perspective about the importance of a medical dental tenant, and it's a privilege to be here. And we're going to share some really interesting components, but let's keep it interactive. Maybe just a quick show of hands. How many doctors, dentists, physicians, vets, etc. do we have in the room? Rough show of hands. Perfect, great. Past client, perfect, good to see you again. And then in terms of investors, who's contemplating investing into a space and potentially having a medical dental tenant in that space? Maybe show of hands. Okay, perfect, similar sense of hands. So the purpose of today is a fewfold. One is, what an amazing time, right, to be in Toronto, right? Yes, the world has changed a lot, but from our perspective, we're pretty unique. We are the only healthcare specialized tenant advisory and lease negotiation firm of our kind in North America. Most of you, it was a bit of an explanation to say, what's a Cirrus and how does it help? But then as soon as I asked, maybe a show of hands, who's ever been involved with a medical dental project in the past? Right. Aha. And how does that compare to a regular project, shall we ask? Exactly. So, as we go through. So today is really to help demystify, in my opinion, the individual physician, the dentist, the vet, the ancillary medical type of clinic is, in many cases, under attack. Right? Doctors are graduating with a higher amount of debt load than ever before. And the large corporate entities are doing everything possible to gobble them up and have them come and be an employee for the rest of their lives. The ability for that young clinician to become an entrepreneur has become an ever-increasing component. So, here is, one of the smartest people in the room that have come with, 6 to 8 years of additional post-education experience, only to come into the situation where taught how to fix teeth as it pertains to opening a new clinic or building out or coring or electrical or dealing with the Ministry of Health and getting permits approved is an insurmountable task, right? And there are so many naysayers out there to say, oh gosh, doctor, you don't want to open your first clinic. You're going to become an employer. What if the employee sues you? What if you sign a lease and you can't open a clinic, right? Oh, it creates this perfect storm, which is why we are seeing an ever-increasing decrease, right, of young doctors opening their first clinic or mid-career doctors opening a second clinic. Yourself, doctor, how much training do you have in the business side? Okay. But I play one on TV, right? Awesome. So yeah, from our perspective, we're going to get into some insights, right, and sharing some best practices. So feel free to throw questions as we go through. I tried to explain this to a few of you. What the heck is Cirrus and how does it exist? Well, first of all, what a beautiful venue. And if you haven't walked through the other spaces, definitely it is incredible because these sorts of spaces are truly part of the long-term partnerships that landlords and builders such as Concord are looking for long-term great partners. It's not, the lease negotiation is not a zero-sum gain. It's about creating a great long-term relationship with that incoming tenant. And we've had the privilege over 30 years to help support those doctors, making sure that it's a great location, right, with a fair deal, right, with dental specific or medical specific language aligned to the long terms. For those of you that have done a medical or dental deal, show of hands, has that been more difficult, right, than a typical build out, restaurant or otherwise? Right? So that's exactly why we exist. So what's unique is we're not brokers. We're never paid directly by the landlord. We're always working for the doctor to help be with them for as long as it takes, as many different lease negotiations as it takes. We're the type of business that you never think would exist outside the crazy world of medical dental because we're just that niche. So we support clients throughout North America. We've had the privilege of working with over 13,000 doctors. right? And successful lease negotiations across North America. We've got active files from Anchorage to Honolulu to Key West and everything in between. We want to help, almost like that franchise model. Talib, one of our lease negotiators, worked for one of the national coffee chains. And one of the first perspectives they are when someone opens a new coffee chain is to say, first of all, incorporate. Number two is, don't deal directly with our landlord, have our corporate guy help do it for you. Right? And so we want to help empower the doctor to make sure that they're getting a great space, dealing with a great landlord, and helping to make sure there's a great long-term commitment. Because ultimately, let's think about it for a second. The dentist, the doctor, is the best tenant on the planet, right? Why? Your wife is a dental tenant. Why is she such a great tenant? Other than she's not here and she's your wife.
You spend so much on fixturing that it makes it almost impossible to move. Like the amount that you put in your initial startup costs just to look at something 10 years down the line makes so much financial sense. So they're there for life.
So it's interesting, right? Bang on. Thank you, Richard. The average dentist is in the same location for 26 and a half years. What would you guess the average build-out cost of a dental clinic today in the GTHA? So on average, typically about $350 per square foot. It can be upwards of $450 per square foot. So the takeaway here is that the dentist has some of the highest build-out and construction costs. So let's touch on that. So we just did an event as part of the Dental Advisory Board with CIBC at their headquarters on Friday, and we have the privilege of speaking to 200 doctors there. They shared the latest bankruptcy rates of dentists. Last year, how many dentists, right, went through a bankruptcy process? Of the 26,000 dentists, how many filed for bankruptcy? Take a guess.
9.
0.
9 is correct, right? 0.027%. And that's the average, roughly 9 per year. So now think about it, right? No wonder Concord has us here. You might be thinking, what the heck? Concord's got Cirrus coming in to talk about how doctors, physicians, vets, et cetera, can find great spaces and have great long-term leases. Yes. So highest build-out cost of any other commercial tenant on the planet. Lowest default rates, right? The restaurant, any restaurateurs in the building? The likelihood they're not there after 10 years, I won't go there, but it's less, right? So plus, you're COVID proof. You cannot work from home, right? Regardless of what your staff says. So it gives you a great opportunity to make sure that the average dental clinic is in the same location for 26 and a half years, right? So now from a landlord's perspective, having a fantastic dentist or multi-dental clinic with big build-out costs, beautiful fixturings, that's in the same location for 26 and a half years with a next to nothing default rate is why we're here today. So again, we want to help demystify this. And yes, between the design, between the architecture, between the layout, there are so many steps in the process that can fall down, right? Talking with one of the great architects here today, it's a perfect piece where, hey, the great group at Henry Schein, the great group at Patterson Dental, the great group at Sinclair, et cetera, right? It sent me these diagrams that said I can fit 4 different operatories in there, but shoot, right? Now I give it to my contractor and suddenly I can't build off this, right? So how do we help to bridge the gap? So that's exactly where we fit in. So we've had the privilege of, again, working with over 13,000, 30 years in the business. So we were founded by Jeremy Bahar, who's obviously family owns the Bahar Group, and he was the one that then started Cirrus, right, with a core component of helping to make sure that the doctor had someone in their corner to make sure that it was aligned so that they never got into a situation where they were building out a dental clinic and then couldn't. So here's just some of the recent dental deals we've done and medical deals here in the GTHA. So there's very few landlords, there's very few doctors, there's very few situations where we haven't helped. So we'll work with young doctors buying or building their first clinics. We'll work with a ton of mid-career doctors expanding, renovating, relocating, or quite frankly, simply renewing their lease agreements every 5 years. Lots of doctors may have signed that lease 10 or 15 years ago without even really looking at it, right? In addition to that, what we're very, very proud of is, we speak landlord and we speak, right, medical doctor, right, and dentist. So it helps us make sure that we can help bridge the gap. We can help the doctor expand, right? It is devastating right now in some cases. The banks now will not issue a long-term loan to a young physician, dentist, vet with insufficient term or certain clauses within the lease. So I'll say that again. right? I'm speaking to RBC's national branch coming up on the 28th. Their underwriters basically state that, look, if young doctor about it to pay $2 to $3 million to purchase a new clinic and or building, right? If there is insufficient term on the lease, their rule of thumb is they will only give a payback, an amortization period of the loan equal to the term on the lease. Meaning full well that some doctors, when they're planning to sell, think, oh gosh, I'll be a month-to-month tenant, it'll be fantastic, right? But then the buyer goes to the bank and says, okay, great, right? I want to buy Dr. Feisel's practice, but the bank then says, sorry, you can't. And now suddenly 100% of those practice sale proceeds go up in the air, all because of that lease they signed in 1986. Right? So the best piece here, right? And thank you again to the Concord team. We want to help make sure that, again, we create great long-term partnerships. We help to make sure that it's a great win, because an actual lease negotiation, it's not a zero-sum game. It's a back and forth. It's creating what's important to the landlord, what's important to the doctor, right? What's important to the investor that might be the in-between, right? Because again, they're great, great tenants. From that perspective, we have all the great commercial real estate data. So we have our proprietary data. We also have all of our license data. So we can see rental rates, vacancies, comp reports, comparables, right? And again, One Gloucester, what an absolutely beautiful facility, right? And fantastic. Every tenant, if we pulled them on that elevator, if we pulled them each and every time and just asked, would you love to walk down in the middle of the winter with your fuzzy bunny slippers right off the TTC and come down and see your local physician, right, and or dentist? It's such a value add service. Healthcare, if there's one key trend going on in North America today, is we are not getting any younger, right? We have an aging population. People are downsizing. People are moving to beautiful facilities such as this, right? And that access to medical and dental care is key. And oral care is healthcare, right? So how do we help to make sure that we are leveraging to our clients on the brokerage side, as well as how do we make sure that we're doing the right pieces? So looking at vacancies, right? Rental rates, vacancies, comp reports become key, right? To make sure that we've got the data to make the right decisions. We also have all these great demographics as we go through as well. So part of what we do with that young doctor that I'm on the Schulich faculty. So Schulich has actually created an MBA course specifically for dentists. So as one of the faculty members and the owner of Cirrus Consulting Group, one of the key things that Schulich is trying to do is to, again, help that mid-career doctor that may not have had the business experience and now suddenly is overseeing 3 different locations. They've created an entire MBA course specifically aimed at that mid-career doctor. So part of what we do is to, again, help to make sure the doctor has the data to make the right decisions. For example, right, what does the demographics look like? We just did a men's care clinic up in North York where even before he opened up, he needed to double the square footage. He went from being 4 doctors to now 18 different doctors and specialists. So Daryl Ginsberg, Dr. Daryl Ginsberg is actually doing one of our upcoming webinars talking about Bill 60. If you haven't been tracking it, Bill 60 is really unique and a fantastic opportunity for locations here. What that in essence involves is an Ontario bill specifically related to physicians being able to open up type of specialty work or imaging work that was typically done in the hospital that can now be done in local privately owned locations. So that's created an interesting perspective that now, right, we could potentially have certain high-tech imaging machines or other types of hospital type of equipment here in typical private spaces as more doctors are bringing the ORs into, right, beautiful spaces such as this. So now, how do we help to capitalize on that? So, prime example is, where do we all fit in? Well, look, the doctor, quite frankly, the doctor doesn't know what they don't know, right? But they love to have a dental medical specific team. So for example, as Nigel, introduced us, it's a team, right? And make sure to work with a, right, medical dental specific team, right? And a landlord that also understands the unique needs of medical dental, right? And a builder, etc. So it's interesting, right? From the dentist perspectives, what's your mission statement, right? I did a course once and in West Allis, Wisconsin, part of Henry Schein's Dental Business Institute. And the instructor said, show of hands, who knows what an org chart is? And with 21 doctors in the room, how many doctors raised their hand? Not one, right? Organizational charts, right? Business 101. So it goes to show, right, how much we can help the doctor make sure that they are, right, well taken care of throughout the process. So building that specific team, building with the designer. We're going to hear some great examples from our friends, specifically describing how the design becomes so important, how the build out, how the architecture becomes so important. The last thing we want by the time the contractor comes through is to say, whoops, boss, we got a problem, right? Because it is now more difficult to build out a medical dental clinic than it was 5 years ago, than it was 5 years prior, than it was 5 years prior to that, right? The government, the Ministry of Health, the lead walls, the certifications that's on a microfiche from 1986 that they won't, they fired the person that was the only person in the province that could actually pull out the data. Craziness. So much so that it's preventing doctors from being able to sell their clinics. So, right, it is one of the biggest takeaways from today is I can think of 3 specific examples here in the Greater Toronto area where the doctor has either bought a unit, right, or leased a unit and cannot build out a dental clinic. I'll say that again, right? A doctor has bought a unit only to find out afterwards cannot build out a dental clinic. So it's not a good thing for the developer. It's not a good thing for the contractor. It's not a good deal for anybody. So the whole premise here is how do we help to make sure collectively, right from the brokerage, real estate side, lease negotiation side, design side, architectural side, build out side, etc. How do we make sure that we're doing everything possible that before we've signed binding letters of intent, we've made sure it's suitable for dentistry. So in one particular case, right, they want to build out a 6 operatory clinic, right? Yet cannot core, right, to the specific numbers needed to build out a 6 operatory ADAC clinic. Number one. Number two, a doctor, right, at Yonge and North York area up on Yonge Street, right, bought a unit, right, only to find out that due to the condo board and other specifics, right, the phase 1 versus phase 2 electrical was insufficient, right, for even doing more than 2 operatories. So, right, the takeaway now, and then this poor doctor has been paying a year worth of interest only and now principal, and now has to become a landlord because the body unit that wanted to build out a specialty medical dental clinic and now can't purely because of the space and not having the right guidance at the right time. So how do we help to protect the doctors is be a partner with the landlord, broker, lease negotiator, dentist, etc. How do we make sure, right from the equipment side, let's get the great teams from the Henry Scheins of the world, et cetera, to come through and make sure, can the doctor sit at 12 o'clock, right, doing continental delivery, right, hunched over all day, every day, and is there enough room, right, with the back cabinetry, for example? These are the type of things that you can provide immense value to your clients, right? And helping to introduce them to, right, the right team at the right time. Because everybody just wants to get a great deal. So the doctor wants it, you want it, right? We're a whole component. And from our perspective, we're always hired directly by the doctor. So look forward to working with many of you. We never derive commissions from the landlord. We're always here to help look out for the doctor, all right, as the tenant advisory firm that we are. So, some key things that we always share with our clients and or landlords with dental tenants is to help follow this key plan. Over 13,000 of these that we've done for our clients. Want to make sure you've got the plan. You want to make sure you've assembled the right professional team. Let's run the financials, right? One of the key things we do is look at a quick pro forma, right? No different as you were doing earlier about here, right? To buy versus lease. Hey, you know what? With a similar amount down, it's actually pretty darn comparable to what a lease would be, but you've got the opportunity to own it. Fantastic, right? It doesn't matter to us if the doctor buys, builds, leases, acquires it from a different doctor. We just want to make sure that that lease is structured. Let it be separating the real estate corporation from the practice corporation, or, right, to make sure they've got the plan. But there are so many of these steps that the doctor who's never done it before needs the help to support the process. So what should it do, right? Of course, fair and affordable financial terms. There's 7 main financial variables: base rents, annual increases, common area maintenance, fixturing, free rent, tenant improvement allowance, landlord work, right? Again, doctors, you are the best tenants on the planet. And talking to Andrew, who runs the retail team for Concord, right, is a perfect perspective because, right, there's lots of flexibility that can be there to help get the doctor approved for the loan, right? Maybe we need to lock in the rent for at a certain rate and then adjust, right? Maybe there's a little extra tenant improvement allowance. How much can we get from the banks, right? What's their risk tolerance team? How do we come up with a good solution? Because, right, you are the best tenant on the planet. We're a little biased, but you get it, right? Number 2 is the stability and security, right? You ask a lot of existing tenants and what's a lease? It's just something I needed in order to get going, right? For a dentist, it's very, very different. They are now selling the dental clinics for 5.9 times the normalized EBITDA, right? 5.9 times their normalized EBITDA. So once they take out the boat, the car, the Tesla, and everything else, right? It is 5.9 times. It's one of the highest value of businesses that are being sold in the GTHA. And that's come down from upwards of 9 times through COVID and the pandemic. I share this because the number one reason why a doctor cannot sell their medical, dental, vet type clinic is because of the lease, right? And typically it could just be in the assignment provision, right? Does it allow them to transfer for the future, right? Is there any sort of termination rights, right? Or demolitions, relocations? There's all sorts of different components that, again, right? The builders, the landlords, they want to make sure it's a great long-term fit, right? And it's not that zero-sum game. So one of the key components they're making sure, typically a 10-year term and 2 5-year options are the minimum. If it's $1 million before the doctor can let in the first doctor, right, and the first patient, right, then that's key. Minimum risk and exposure. Let's talk about that. There was a devastating example of a doctor who was 43 years of age, north of the GTA, who had built out a beautiful 6-operatory clinic. So his entire life, he was an associate, he was always working for another doctor, finally got the motivation and enthusiasm to open their very first clinic. Only then, 3 weeks prior to the grand opening, the doctor died of a massive heart attack. Fully built out clinic, no doctor, no patients. How much is that clinic worth? So here's what happened. The bank, right, God bless them, they got their pound of flesh from the life insurance policy. That's their game. Unfortunately then, right, the doctor and the estate was still bound to the remaining, right, 9.5 years on the lease, right? So part of this is, again, the uniqueness of a medical dental tenant, right? They hired us, we were able to get it assigned, but still, right, that wife is still, right, continually liable through the process. So part of this is we can have great language that's just as great for the landlord as it is specifically for the doctor. The doctor is the sole breadwinner, right? My godfather went golfing at 55 years of age, tore his rotator cuff. My father, a general physician, right, was sitting in the chair, right? Right? And my godfather was doing one of these, right? Trying to do the exam. My dad said, what's wrong? He's like, I don't know. I tore it. I took this golf shot. I don't know. I said, no, it's not good, right? Went into the orthopedic surgeon, opened him up. There wasn't any cartilage left. He had to sell his clinic the next week, right? With minimal savings. So, how do we help to, again, make sure that it's a beneficial agreement? We put in a dental-specific death and disability clause, right? The doctor might necessarily be disabled, but if he slices his finger on the gate on the way out the door, right, and suddenly now, right, you're certainly not disabled, but you're certainly not practicing wet finger dentistry. So having those flexibilities, having those flexibilities can be maximizing the ultimate value. And again, how do we put a protective force field around those eventual practice sale proceeds? As I mentioned before, there's lots of different ways that the landlord can help, right? That we can find a great win-win. How do we make sure that we've planned financially for it? And how do we help to make sure that, again, it's to the landlord's benefit to have a great tenant that pays the rent on time as a great support? For those of you that own your own space, right, or spouses own the space and the spouse is the doctor, etc., the importance of creating a lease agreement, separating the real estate corporation from the practice corporation is critical and probably one of the biggest misses in today's dental medical world. So many doctors today, they're so excited, they buy their first unit, they buy their first building, they come into it and they say, okay, fantastic, I'm ready to go. All right, I'm gonna go see my patients. And hey, I'm my own landlord, that's great. I know I'll pay myself rent, maybe my accountant will do something, right? But unfortunately, without a lease, they can't get the loan approved, right? Without a lease, from a tax and audit perspective, hey, if you're overpaying or underpaying in rent, paying from one pocket to the other, Trudeau's just added 13,000 auditors that go after entrepreneurs, especially that are paying from one pocket to the other, right? So how do we actually know if we're paying ourselves fair market rent or not? Maybe on the high side, maybe on the low, right? The accountant can give the guidance. Should you pay yourself triple net, right? Should you pay yourself on a modified gross or a gross lease, right? The biggest mistake we see doctors doing today is they don't create a lease with themselves, right? And they are exposing themselves that, heaven forbid, if anything were to happen to them or they were to pass away, or doctor, you were to get hit by a bus on the way leaving, right, the course, then unfortunately, it leaves the ability to sell the clinic in peril. And within a medical dental clinic, if it doesn't sell in the first 90 days, it doesn't sell at all. It's called the emergency exit, right? And it is the biggest reason that a medical dental clinic loses its value, is because if there's insufficient term, right? If there's different guarantees or there's no ability to transfer the lease, right? The value of that clinic goes down to the charts, if anything. And every month that passes, right? It's not even just the lack of their production, their revenue, it's actually the patient attrition. And we've tracked it at over 8.32% that every month the doctor is closed, right? That clinic is, patients go down the street and they never come back, right? So now put yourselves in the mindset of the doctor. We're now getting a true appreciation of why the partnership, right, with Concord and otherwise is so important to help make sure that it's aligned to the long-term goals of the clinic. So bottom line, to create the lease, it's tax and audits, it's liability, slips and falls. Who's responsible? Is it the building or the clinic, right? Who are the lawyers going after, right? And also, most doctors want the ability to keep the unit as a passive form of income and sell their clinic separately, right? Without a clean lease, without paying rent, how do you properly do a valuation? One side note on valuation, right? Tier 3, one of the largest brokerages here in Canada, just recently acquired by Henry Schein, one of our longstanding contracted partners. Tier 3, if there is a demolition clause or lack of term, they will actually reduce the valued price of the clinic by over $350 per square foot. So in other words, right, just because of certain little tiny clauses, right, it can make the difference of a significant exit. And again, there's no big value from the landlord, and these are things that can be structured. Maybe it's a deferral, maybe it's a blackout period. There's 101 different ways that we can help support the doctor to make sure it's a good fit, right, for both the builder and the landlord as well. Don't underestimate, right? The average doctor at $5,000 a month, increasing at 3% per year, represents $2.9 million, right, on a 30-year that the doctor and or their future buyers in the same location, right? So again, the reason why we're here is this: there is no better tenant, right? And when looking at the investment, right, most again, young doctors want prime real estate, lots of natural light, high ceilings, right? Talib, how many clients do we see? And that's what they want, right? So the value there is key. Just quickly, right, at a high level, how are we doing for time, Nigel? Right? These are just some of the main clauses that, right, you, right, and your clients, right, should be aware of and can have some very win-win language, right, that doesn't cost the landlord or developer a penny, but it does give a lot more peace of mind and it does give a lot more reduction of risk. So let's touch on a few of them. One of the first is alterations. So, right, not speaking for Concord, but, you know, how do we help to make sure, what changes can the doctor make in the space, right, versus what might the contractor have issues for? Obviously, structural beams, etc., is a no-no and needs approval. But how do we design things so if they want to make some minor architectural changes, right, that it doesn't necessarily need the same amount of work or pre-approvals? Some other components are, how do we make sure that continuous operation? You know, when we see a strip mall with Home Depot or otherwise, most doctors don't realize that there needs to be a minimum amount of time, right, that they have to be open, lit, well lit, open, right, Monday through Saturday between 9 to 5, right? Well, most doctors haven't even flipped through and found that hard in the lease. Yet, in many cases, that also means they can't actually go out for a vacation. Assignment. Assignment by far is one of the most important components. When the doctor looks to sell, right, or transfer that lease, either to a partner or a buy-in or buy-out, right, very important that we've given a clear guidelines. It's great for the landlord, it's great for the tenant. What happens when you do want to sell, right? Can it be withheld, delayed, conditioned? Who can you potentially sell to, right? Typically, it's another AAA, good credit-worthy doctor. Right? How do we make sure that that's clearly laid out throughout the process? Death and disability, I touched on before. Demolitions, relocations, right? Yes, almost every landlord on the planet for brand new buildings are going to look for relocation demolitions. That's okay, right? Quite frankly, if you own the unit, you would want the same ability as if you were the landlord. However, we do want to make sure we give enough time and predictability so the bank will approve the loan, because what's the point if not, right? And how do we help to make sure that at least we're clear on when would that potential redevelopment look like, right? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years, right? And is the doctor okay with that risk threshold? Right? We helped a young doctor the other day. There was only 5 years worth of term, but it was a startup doctor, fully built out clinic, right? Fantastic opportunity. Ultimately, the best guidance is time is equal to leverage. So as you're thinking of expanding, renovating, relocating, et cetera, and working with your partners on it, the more time there is, the more ability there is to get the right partners involved and to start typically a renewal process 24 months in advance, right? Most doctors, when they're thinking of expanding or moving into the adjacent suite, what an amazing opportunity to take, for example, we'll see and do a walkthrough right around the corner. It literally lays out how the doctor who's doing $250,000 per chair, right? That's the threshold to then want to move across the hall, as we'll see from one of the great medical dental clinics right across the way in the floor plans. So how do we help to make sure is by starting as early as possible. The last thing we want to do is to wait, delay, stall. We want to make sure we've got a key plan. So what have we done, right, over the past 30 years of experience working with medical doctors? Number one is making sure we get all the information. As you're working with your clients, if they're already in existing space, get that existing ground floor, right? Get the existing lease and as many different amendments, riders, exhibits. Number two is be involved with your clients to help ensure that you know what their goals are. When do they look to transition, right? What's the production like, right? How's their staffing plan? Are they bringing in an associate? Is the associate an employee or an independent contractor? All of these components are a huge piece of not only the lease, but also designing a long-term strategy to help ensure the doctor has a great plan moving forward. In addition to that, understand what's in the lease, right? Most doctors focus on the first half of the first page, right? Base rent, who's it going to, maybe the annual increase. Yet there's another 72 and a half other pages that could be important to the doctor, right? And that the landlord has no issues with making changes for, but it does need to be done early. It's much easier to fix on the way in than it is 2 or 3 years later to say, Andrew, oh my gosh, I forgot to add something to the lease. Can I reopen that again? No, we're sailing down the river together. Right? Then get the research, rental rates, vacancies, comp reports. Then come with a great outcome and strategy. Long before the doctor even should look at a lease, they should be already thinking about that carefully choreographed game of chess. How do we make sure that we know what the design is, what the architect looks like, right? How do we make sure that I can fit 2 operatories here and here? Gosh, doctor, that's going to be tough because the new ADEC chairs have an angle of right? Then negotiate the financials, then negotiate the business clauses, and not stop until we get to that final form lease agreement that, right, everyone's satisfied with. So in the folders, again, for yourselves, your clients, etc., if you haven't done many medical dental deals, or you've been concerned because you've heard some horror stories of build-outs gone wrong and challenges, etc., this is a perfect opportunity that in the folder, we will do a full complimentary lease review, rental rate analysis, demographic reports to help, again, make you feel and demystify the whole process and make you certainly empowered to help speak more intelligently to your medical dental tenants, right? And know that there's a hyper specialized resource like Cirrus to help make sure that you, as their broker, can make you look like a star, and making sure we get the right architect in place, the right builder, the right designer, right? And make sure that you have a fantastic tenant in the same location for decades and decades to come. On that note, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Eric. Amazing presentation, lots of good information there. We're just gonna have a quick Q&A session, and I'm gonna get the ball rolling with a couple of questions. Eric, if you don't mind, please. And then the mic is open, whoever would like to raise a question, I have a mic with me. So the first question is, what is the current trend in Canada for design and lease negotiations? What are you seeing from your perspective?
I'll talk about the lease negotiation. I'll pass it to you guys for the design as a good lead in. It's unique, certainly pre-COVID and post-COVID. COVID was the biggest surge of new clients we've ever had in our history. So what happened, of course, in 2020, everyone laid off their staff. Their number one hit to overhead became their tenancy expense. And doctors, for the first time, sort of dusted off that lease from 1986. So I think that there's, on the positive for everybody, there's a greater awareness of the importance of the lease, right, of how to, the steps involved to structure the lease, and also, again, the value of a medical dental client. So the biggest trends is it's become far more complicated than it ever has before. And the old proverbial, I've got a, gosh, Puyan, my cousin builds cabinetries, right? They said they'll do my build it for you. Right? That just doesn't happen. So the complexities involved now with medical dental tenants are insurmountable, that it's not insurmountable rather, but it makes sure that you've got the right team in place to have seen all the issues that go wrong. Is it a smaller waiting area? We're seeing a lot more trends on. The efficiencies of getting patients in has never been faster, right? How many people have waited more than 10 minutes waiting for their dentist lately, right? Okay, one, right? Maybe two. Pretty few and far between. They are now, right, on it. So that process has become a lot of challenges. There's the changes between what was a lot of open bays or open architecture, typically orthodontic, now a lot more enclosed, right, for air and other purification type perspectives. So there are certainly some design changes where how do I get more physical production areas, right? Every operatory should be producing anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 per chair per year, right? So it gives a great opportunity to make sure that how do I make sure, hey, maybe I can rejig my staff room and bathroom a little bit so I can put a fifth chair. That to that doctor could mean an extra $250,000 a year, right? Or even better, when they go to sell or potentially sell to a corporate buyer, they want to turn it into a dental producing machine, 6 days, 7 days a week. They want as many different operatories as they can. They want as many different associates and dentists and hygienists as they can. So again, the space and utilizing every square foot of that space becomes absolutely critical and worth hundreds of thousands of dollars down the road.
Here's another question. Hiring a lease negotiator, does that affect a tenant's relationship with the landlord?
Aha. Well, actually, Nigel, that's a good question. Nigel, maybe from your perspective, right? Or Andrew or otherwise, right? We get that question all the time, right? Why? Why would Concord have a company like Cirrus here, right? How do you help? How do you look and work with a doctor like that? And by having a specialist to help bridge the gap, right? Maybe Nigel or Andrew or otherwise, maybe share your perspective.
Well, I guess just a quick comment then. We had a prospect where the medical professional doctor was like, it was a dentist, and came to us and just said, yeah, I'll come in, but I want to make sure I get to pour 35 holes in your slab. Okay, well, and just hearing about it, I was like, wait, what's going on? But later on, as you actually hear, of course, being a dentist, they would have hot water line, cold water line, or whatever different lines. It might actually kind of come up in a similar spot, okay? As well as maybe it's actually along the same line because they got different patient rooms. So I would propose that with a right sort of advisory, they can come up with a plan and let you know, okay, well, it's just along the same line here, and it's just these kind of holes that they're gonna pour. It would make the understanding so much simpler. As a result, instead of having, okay, we're gonna put 30 holes down your slab, that's gonna look like a honeycomb from the ground below, right? So at least it's just a simple instance where I think having the right kind of consultancy can really simplify the understanding.
It's a great point where bringing in a company like ours actually strengthens the relationship with the landlord, right? Because look, the doctor's busy, they're chairside, they're running around. These are major challenges throughout the day. And quite frankly, in some cases, the landlord refers the doctor to us to say, look, the doctor, God bless them, but they're not sure what's fair, what's reasonable. They're focusing on these 2 or 3 points, which just, right, are just not movable because of X, Y, Z. Right? And in some cases, it's just someone that can help bridge the gap, help to explain to the doctor, well, really, what is the risk? Or what's your underlying concern? Or what's the percentage risk? Or what have we seen over 13 and a half years? So by being able to help sort of show both sides. Here's what's fair and reasonable. Here's what's good, right? Here's what they've agreed to, and again, when the landlord says no, that's great, right? Okay, here's 12 different step downs, which can still be a lot better than what it might have been just from a standard form. So it does, with the expertise, it helps to bridge the gap, it helps to explain, and it does help to strength on both sides.
Can I pose a question?
Please.
So how is amongst the different medical uses, and it's easy for us even to kind of think of, okay, family doctors, dentists, those are easy ones that we associate with, right? So in current trends right now, are there certain like other medical uses that is becoming more and more popular or that are really in demand for space?
Great question. And I can probably defer to Talib to think of some unique files we've had lately. I think there's definitely a lot more of a cosmetic, heck, there's even some Invisalign studios. These are doctors that are keeping their ground floor retail at Yonge and Eglinton and adding a secondary space across the street. And they're just doing Invisalign, the clear aligners, etc. And there's so much money with these clear aligners, $5,000, $6,000 per patient. They're not even drilling, they don't even need the chairs, but just for this sort of Invisalign studio and the digital and all the big screens, right? For all the young millennials, they're just coming in droves. And that, you'd never even think of that 10 years ago, that just an Invisalign studio could be its own space. So that's one trend. There's a lot more now, sort of the dental spa is an interesting component. Get your nails done, get some Botox, right? There's different pieces across the country. There's still some regulation pieces in different areas. That's an interesting perspective. You've also got a lot of general dentists now expanding and looking at bringing in an orthodontist once or twice a month. Maybe there's an oral maxillofacial surgeon. Are we doing deep IV sedation now? It's become an interesting component. Is it sleep dentistry? Are we doing TMJ? Are there all sorts of other components? And yes, that might be an issue if not in the lease. Or maybe there's exclusivity to the orthodontist in there that the general dentist can't be doing Invisalign. So there's a whole bunch of these neat little complexities that, you're right, the average doctor doesn't know the lord of the land, right? It's very important to it. But yeah, it's created this whole new sort of wave. We did, Scott Goldberg, 21 years with us, we did a medical clinic, and it was a men's health clinic. Basically, sort of think of lazy boys and big screen TVs watching football there. And so you've got 2 or 3 GPs, and then they said, oh, well, I've got some buddies from medical school. I've got a urologist. Well, we definitely need a urologist, right? And we've got a cardiologist. And then they started expanding, so much so that my dad went there, right? And connected with the specialist, right? Got a surgery booked shortly thereafter. And it was this really neat concept of a men's care Unify Health clinic, specifically designed with a different niche. And he said the day he opened, Isaac, he was at capacity, day one. So it doesn't even register to all of us outside of being a physician, but the physicians, it is an infinite demand, day one. Yet they're barely making any money. Why? Because it's $39 to go see your physician, right? For a checkup, right? And then every time you come back, it's half of that. right? A dermatologist, it's $60 or $69, and then half if you ever go back, right, within the year. The amount of how little we're paying physicians in the province of Ontario is crazy. So the only way they can make money is efficiency. I need an architect that's done 12 different medical clinics, right? Puyan, maybe just to add, right? The efficiency of every individual square footage. So anything else from trends, Puyan? Because you were doing roughly with AceCon construction, you were doing sort of 3/4 was dentistry. Now you're doing 3/4 medical. It's all about though the efficiency and the ads. It's literally down to, I think of Elon Musk and all of his, diagrams and his mega factories, and he's got down to the square millimeter of every inch and cranny to look at the process flow in nauseam from every single step. You'd never think about that going to your physicians, but that's how they have to look today. The only way they can make any money is to have that absolute assembly line type of model, and it's all predicated on this in the space.